We had a company called LSD do a stage set. We were going to do a big American tour. We were opening at the Maple Leaf Gardens in Canada. And somebody said, anyone got an idea of what we should do as a stage set? Geezer said, Stonehenge. And the guy said, well, how do you envisage this? And he said, life-size. So they produced a life-size Stonehenge in carbon fibre and whatever. And 3 container loads went out with the rest of the equipment to Canada. And we could get about a quarter of it on stage, and we're sort of edging between these huge monoliths and whatever. Don Arden was the manager at the time. Don Arden, who I have a very soft spot for. And so we get there, and it's unbelievable. There's all this Stonehenge stuff. So we get to the point where normally, and if anyone's seen Spinal Tap, you'll recognise this, normally 3 or 4 roadies used to come on in monks' cowls, and the bells would chime, you know, the dong, dong, and then we go into something like War Pigs or Iron Man or whatever the opening thing was. And on the last, we noticed a dwarf walking around on the day before the opening show, and what's this dwarf? Oh, never mind. So on the final production rehearsal in the afternoon, just doing the bits and pieces, this tape came on of a baby screaming. Now this is the album we did was called Born Again, and the cover was it's a horrible cover. It was a newborn baby painted red with long yellow claws coming out of its fingernails and 2 little horns coming out of its head. And so there's this dwarf comes out. And he's walking across the top of this Stonehenge, and there's this tape screaming, and the dwarf's miming of the screaming, and the tape sort of fades away, and the dwarf falls back from about 35 feet in the air, and falls onto this big pile of mattresses, right? And then, dong, the bells start, and the monks come out, and then, bong, and the whole thing. It's pure Spinal Tap. So Bevan was playing drums at the time. It was a peculiar year for Sabbath, and we made the best of it. And we're saying to Don, we think this is in the worst possible taste, this dwarf, you know. And Don's going, no, the kids will love it, you know, it'll be great. Okay. So we're watching from the wings, and this dwarf comes out in a red costume with the yellow fingernails, wow, screaming. I'm looking at the kids, they're going, really, I mean, just everyone was bursting into laughter, you know, it was absolutely horrendous. So anyway, the dwarf came out and fell off, and the scream sort of tailed away, and the monks came out with their cowls, dong, the bells, and you could still hear the screaming in the background. It wasn't the tape, it was the dwarf, because we'd taken all the mattresses away, you see. And that was the end of the dwarf. So then came the real problem, because I couldn't get into my brain any of these lyrics. I couldn't understand them. And so the day before we went away, I said to my wife, I said, I cannot soak in these words. There's no storyline, I can't relate to what they mean. And so I made a cue book. I never used monitors on stage. I've never used monitors. So I made this cue book, and it was one of those display books with plastic pages, and I'd written all the cue lines out, and I practiced in my kitchen before I went away, turning the pages over with my foot. And so I thought, well, that's going to be okay. And I had them put 2 wedges on the front of the stage. They weren't plugged in, but 2 monitor wedges to conceal the book. So after the dwarf had fallen without the mattresses and the monks came on and bang, and then all the dry ice started, bang, we're away. And I walk out, bearing in mind that Ronnie Dio was the previous singer. And it's great, the audience is fantastic, going berserk and whatever. And I walk out, and they've got the biggest amount of dry ice I've ever seen. They must have had 6 buckets up there. And the dry ice is pumping out, and there's floor spots and everything else. And I'm going around giving it all that, you know, shaking the mic stand around and, yeah. And I suddenly went, oh, shit. The dry ice was sort of waist high, and it's swirling towards the front of the stage. And there's my book. And I couldn't remember the first line of the song. And so I had to fall to my knees, you know, sort of in a dramatic pose, you know, and I'm going, trying to blow the dry ice away. And I'm trying to see what the first line was. And by this time, I'm panicking so much, I don't know what the hell's going on. So I'm going, ah-da-da-da-da. And all you could see was my head popping up above the dry ice and then down again to see the words again. And up again. And I heard somebody in the front shout out, "It's Ronnie Dio!"